Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I just finished watching this video, and a very revealing video to say the least. Very difficult video to get through, and the reason being because it seems as though the Sheikh Imran Hosein, the Islamic eschatologist, self-styled scholar of the Quran, he seems to be at his wit's end, and the entire video discussion was incredibly derogatory, and I'm not siding with Dili Hussein whatsoever, and I do think that there's a lot of value in seeing where people like Sheikh Imran Hosein have been leading the believers in the Quran, Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, in these times where clearly we have some sort of a herding of humanity into one of two categories. And it seems to be very much orchestrated. And the one thing I want to discuss here, to not make the video too long, is really his famous contention regarding chapter 43 of the Quran, verse 61. And this is the idea that Jesus, Isa al-Masih, is a sign, is a knowledge for the hour. Do not be in doubt of it. I'm going to talk to you about that very verse, but first I want to show you exactly what his stance is to this day. And mind you, he hasn't changed any of his stances whatsoever, as ludicrous as they come. And then we can kind of dissect what does this actual verse talk about in reality.
About your take on the verse of the Quran 43:61, وَإِنَّهُ لَعِلْمٌ لِلسَّاعَةِ, where you said that Isa alayhi salam being the knowledge of the hour is incorrect, and rather you adopted the translation of the Qur'an, which was وَإِنَّهُ لَعَلَمًا لِلسَّاعَةِ, right, which is he is the sign of the hour, not the knowledge. What is your is that position you still stand by?
They said that I am a kafir.
They did.
So
They can continue to say.
I'm going to spare you the diatribe, but basically it's very difficult for him to answer questions in a direct way throughout the entire interview. And I sense a lot of some kind of built-up animosity towards the truth and the validity of a lot of these questions directed towards Imran Hosein.
Has two kinds of verses. I wish we had more time, but I can't stay. But you raising new indefinitely this. There are those verses which are ayah muhkama, where you don't interpret. No, you simply explain. And these are called the heart of the Quran, Kitab.
So I just want to highlight that inaccuracy on the part of the Sheikh. Essentially, the verse, I can bring it up for you on the screen. Just give me one moment here. So essentially what we see here is I believe 3:7. Okay. So it says هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آية محكمات هن الكتاب. So right there, this word doesn't mean absolutely clear. They have injected this idea in the Quran that there are clear verses and unclear verses. That is not at all what the verse is saying. It says there are, from it are verses, muhkamatun. Look at what this refers to. Hukam, precise. That's something they added in as well. Judging, hakim, wisdom. Rulings, hukum are rulings. Okay? Arbitrations. That's really what it's talking about. These are rulings, arbitrations. Muhkamat. They're not absolutely clear because all of the ayat are clear. Bayyinat. Al-Kitab doesn't mean heart of the Kitab, as the Sheikh stated. It's mother of the Kitab. We take the Quran exactly as it's revealed. There is no interpolating. There are no biases coming into play here. This one says, وَأُخَرُ مُتَشَابِهَاتٌ. This is the idea they got, that somehow these are unclear verses. Mutashabihatun refers to semblance, allegories. Does that mean it's not clear? No, it means it's clear. It's a clear analogy. And this is what you can term parallelisms, when the Quran draws parallels between things. It's not talking about them being unclear. So the ones that do not follow this, and they seek to cause discord regarding this idea that these parallels drawn in the Quran are unclear, you can understand why this is such a fitna in the discussion around the Quran. Those firm in the knowledge say, we believe in all of it from our Lord. So, let's go back to the main point.
So you don't play around. You don't play around like a schoolboy with an ayah muhkama, because
you don't play around with any of the Quran, Sheikh Imran. You don't play around with any of the Quran. The Quran is clear, perfected speech of the Creator. There is no playing around, and he actually encourages and establishes the necessity of a priesthood, okay, like all the other religions. Why? Because he has decided, like every Sunni Muslim, that these are unclear verses and require experienced, knowledgeable scholars to do all the work for us, so we can basically use them to intercede on our behalf on the Day of Judgment. And I say intercede because basically that's what the definition is. You are shirking your responsibilities. Have you ever heard of the English word shirk? To avoid a duty or neglect a responsibility. Interesting that this is the word that has the identical sound as the Arabic word shirk, which refers to idolatry or polytheism. The problem we should avoid in this discussion is not the allegations of someone being called a kafir. Every person that styles themselves as Muslim believes already that the Quran is Allah's speech. The issue is not of takfir, it's of tashriq, it's of shirk. Neglecting our duty to understand the Quran as it's revealed from a first-person perusing of the text, a critical analysis independent of any priesthood. That is our duty as believers.
This is the heart of the book. The verses which have to be interpreted.
Mhm.
And from the language of the verse, it is clear that this is a shadow in three parts. Okay?
He's referring to some kind of another verse in Surah Al-Mursalat that's irrelevant to this discussion. So I'm just going to move to the verse in question, where he says that there is another qira'at that basically changes the sound of the word ilm, which means knowledge. And because of this shift in the sound, which obviously indicates that Imran Hosein, along with anybody who believes in qira'at, different qira'at of the Quran, they acknowledge the Quran has been changed already by their admission. It's very interesting that Dili Hussein of this very video, at the very beginning, he makes he establishes the point that nothing of the Quran has been changed, diacritical marks, everything. But at the same time, as a Sunni Muslim, he believes that qira'at are valid, even though they differ in those tashkil marks.
Can be pronounced as ilm, which means knowledge, or alam, which means sign. One of the most eminent of all the companions of the Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, insofar as the knowledge of the Quran and the explanation of the Quran is concerned, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he read the verse as alam, and this is universally accepted. If such an important...
So he put there in the text, both pronunciations and meanings are correct and do not contradict each other. I'm so glad that he put that, because he is acknowledging that there are different pronunciations of the same Quranic text. So both him and Sheikh Imran Hosein acknowledge the Quran has variant readings. Sheikh Imran Hosein is a little bit less apologetic, and he just cherry picks the one that fits his Russia narrative. And by the way, I fully intend to make a video to show you this idea that Muslims and Christians and everyone caught in the middle of this greater World War III effort, whatever you want to call it, are very much definitely being led to the slaughter like sheep by people like the likes of Sheikh Imran Hosein. There's no question that these sorts of talking points and frankly propaganda against people that simply don't want anything to do with these sects, don't want anything to do with this politics, which is all a game that's staged against the believers. They are trying their most desperate attempts at this time to gain influence and followers and try to dissuade people away from the straight path, away from the exact words Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says very clearly about the Quran, in favor of falsehood.
Companion of the Prophet ﷺ, if he read the verses with innahu la'alaman lisar, then if you have even 5 rupees worth of knowledge in your not knowledge, common sense in your head, you should be provoked to ask the question, how come that every single copy of the Quran I pick up today says something else?
Did you hear what he said? So he thinks that the Qur'ans have variant readings. He sees them as valid. So he's using this excuse, which is a fraud. It's a fraud on a mass scale. It's a forgery, to buttress the idea that somehow Jesus Christ is coming back. There's nothing to suggest from the Quran unequivocally that Isa al-Masih has anything to do with the hadith stories of the end times regarding Dajjal and Messianic prophecies and the Mahdi. None of it. And what's very interesting is throughout the discussion, Imran Hosein espouses these biases even at the ripe old age of 80 years old. And the biases obviously are geared towards an Eastern power nexus regarding Russia, China, Iran. Whereas, the other side of the equation is steering people away from that. Okay, so what I think is going on is a very last-ditch attempt to try to control and manage the flow of the discussion regarding the Quran, knowing very well that at this very moment, in this auspicious time, we are seeing all sorts of discoveries and breakthroughs regarding the Quran's reminders that we have forgotten for Allah knows how long. And in the desperation, knowing that most people are turning away from the mainstream narrative given to us by the West and the Western powers that really created the problem regarding these fake fabricated documents that we call manuscripts and variant readings and hadith and all of the nonsense in between. They are now providing this fake counter narrative of somehow the ultimate savior of the world is Russia. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is nothing to suggest at all. In fact, quite the opposite. That what we would call the two ends of the political spectrum regarding geopolitics are two wings of the same bird. We have this idea that Yahud and Nasara work together, allies of each other. But you'll never hear Sheikh Imran Hosein mention that verse. He will mention the ones that somehow, I don't know how, seem to reveal that Orthodox Christianity is the odd one out. That's the one that somehow follows the teachings of Isa al-Masih. Quite the opposite. There is no crucifixion of Isa al-Masih anywhere in the Quran. In fact, it completely denies this mutawatir hadith of the people at the time apparently witnessing Isa al-Masih being crucified. That's a fake hadith. The Quran exposes that fake history.
That's what I'm asking you. How come?
Let me repeat my question. If you have even 5 rupees worth of common sense in your head, if the most eminent companion of the Prophet, insofar as the knowledge and explanation of the Quran is concerned, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, if he recited the verses, إِنَّهُ لَعَلَمٌ لِلسَّاعَةِ, that he, Jesus, is the sign of the hour. Hence, the Quran is pointing clearly so to his return. If this isn't the verse, the way...
I'm going to stop you right there, Sheikh. Essentially, what these people do is they follow their assumptions to their graves. And obviously, I don't have to tell you that Imran Hosein's hesitancy and agitation throughout this discussion is nothing less than palpable. In fact, at the very least, it's disturbing him how he's being confronted with very simple questions. If he was on the witness stand in the day of judgment or not, you would know there's something up with his testimony. Now, he pointed right there with a straight face and said, Jesus Christ is the sign of the hour and his return is from the Quran. He used this verse to justify it. If people might not be aware, maybe they're not familiar with the Quran, maybe they've only heard Sheikh Imran's Russophilic side, maybe they've only heard the Sunni side, which tends to agree with most of the story of Sheikh Imran's premise, which is that Isa al-Masih was somehow ascended to heaven and he is coming back to kill the Dajjal, to establish the Khilafah, slaughter the pigs, destroy the cross, convert forcibly all of the world to Muslims or kill them, and then inexplicably when Ya'juj and Ma'juj are released, even though Sheikh Imran obviously believes that's already happened, then he will take all of the remaining believers to Mount Sinai while Ya'juj and Ma'juj are assaulted by some worms that bite their necks and kill them. This is the normative Sunni stance. So I'm just going to show you what does the Quran actually say in the Arabic regarding this verse. Okay, this is the idea that I want to get through is Jesus Christ's name is not in the verse whatsoever. He's not even alluded to because another topic of discussion enters the verses. So when we go to this verse here, this one was talking about Isa al-Masih. And notice the pronoun, in huwa. That's a person. I can show you just so you're aware of what is presented after. So when the son of Maryam was presented as an example, behold, your people from it, I guess they laughed out loud. Does this mean laugh out loud? Or did they avert avert somebody. You can notice how the translators took great liberties to hide the actual meaning, the plain reading of the text. I thought these are muhkamat verses. Why do the translators again and again take great liberties? Anyway, and they said, are our gods better or he? Notice again, huwa, that's a person, Isa. ما ضربوه لك إلا جدالا. So basically, I mean, this is the one they say is strike, interestingly enough. No, they are a people khasimun. So we've already talked about Ibn Maryam, Isa ibn Maryam, okay? When he was striked? No, when he was presented as an example, okay? Allah does not strike examples. That is nonsensical. In huwa. So now we know it's talking about Isa, okay? In huwa. And I just showed you that in huwa is right here. This is perfectly logical. Okay? Huwa ibn Maryam. So let's go back. In huwa illa abdun, was except a servant. An'amna, we bestowed our favor alayhi, upon him. Alayhi. وَجَعَلْنَاهُ مَثَلًا لِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. Of course, he is from Bani Israel. We made him an example to Bani Israel. That's where the verse ends. A new verse begins here, verse 60. Okay? وَلَوْ نَشَاءُ لَجَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ مَلَائِكَةً فِي الْأَرْضِ يَخْلُفُونَ. That's the end of this verse. So Allah changes the content of the verses. He finished with Isa, and then he moves on to, if we willed, surely we would have made from you all angels in the earth succeeding. And, so that's how you know it's continuing that idea. And, innahu, not in huwa, innahu, this is a thing. Innahu la ilmun للساعة فلا تمترن بها واتبعون هذا صراط مستقيم. This is why this is so critical, because what Sheikh Imran Hosein is saying is that Sirat al-Mustaqim is actually believing that Isa is a knowledge or sign of the hour, to not be in doubt about it. This is so critical to the Christian religion. It's critical to the Sunni Muslim religion, let alone the Shia religion. And it's also critical to the Jewish religion, because Judaism also has two messianic figures, whereas Christianity has one of them and Islam has the other one of them. The Quran does not endorse any of these religions from Abraham's people. The Quran endorses Millat Ibrahim Hanifan Musliman. That is the millet that Ibrahim took as his own, that Allah endorsed, aside from what his people believed. That's why you have the symbols of Islam as the moon, the Christianity as the cross, Judaism as the star. These are fabricated religions. They call them Abrahamic religions because they're from the people of Abraham, that Allah says in the Quran are the lowest of the low, because they plotted against Ibrahim. They tried to put him in the hellfire, literally, and they failed, because Allah protects his messengers. Let me show you again. And if we willed, surely we would have made from you all angels in the earth succeeding, and it indeed is surely a knowledge for the hour. So do not be in doubt of what? Biha. This is feminine. Do not be in doubt of the hour. Not Jesus Christ. He's not even alluded to or mentioned in this verse. The thing that is mentioned in this verse is what precedes it, which is the idea. Angels succeeding in the earth is indeed a knowledge for the hour. So do not be in doubt of the hour and follow this siratun mustaqim. He doesn't say follow me. There is no ya, possessive ya at the end of attabi'un. It's attabi'un hada siratun mustaqimun. Done. End of discussion. Imran Hosein has spent most of his life shilling away. And I don't know what the motivations are for that, but believe me, everyone will get their due on the Day of Judgment. And there is no avoiding that whatsoever. The Quran means what it says, and it says what it means. There is no ambiguity. There are no variant readings. And what they're going to argue for, both of them, is that the tashkil are not preserved, that the Quran came down from the celestial realms with Jibreel without any diacritical markings. This is the normative lie they have sold us. Believers in the Quran are given a bad deal with the history of the Quran. We're told that Uthman compiled the Quran. We're told that the Quran was burned, all its other copies were burned in variants, and then inexplicably we still have all kinds of variants called qira'at and ahruf. Then we also have the story of, basically the Quran not having any written history that includes all of the things we have in the Mus'haf today. People will claim that the Quran is completely oral. This goes against what the Quran, the definition of that word in Arabic even means. It does not mean recitation. The definition of Quran in Arabic is reading, at the very least. The very first ayah of the Quran, they will tell you, is Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaqa. That they say is revealed. This does not mean recite. It means read. We will make you read. Not recite, reading, read. The Prophet was clearly not illiterate, because you have to be literate in order to be able to read. The idea that the Quran was always oral and continues to be oral, and that there is no validity to the consistency of the manuscript of the Quran that every Muslim home has in their hands today, called Hafs an Asim. Okay, they just named it that, by the way. It's just the Quran. That's all it is. That is a complete hoax. The idea that the Quran's manuscript is not preserved, every single tashkil, every single symbol, every single number, every single surah, every piece of that mushaf, we believe, the believers in the Quran believe all of it. Do you remember this verse? آمنا به كل من عند ربنا. Okay? And notice Allah makes sure to add in that none will take heed except these very interesting people called ulul al-albab. So,
the Abbas recited the Quran. The copy of the Quran that we find in the world today is saying something else.
I'm a therapist who goes to therapy.
Okay, one sec, guys.
Okay. Sleep, brother, to ask this question. Number 2, if you recite the Quran as innahu la ilmun lisar, that Jesus is the ilm of the hour. What is the meaning of ilm? unless I have to change my head and go in the market and Jesus is the knowledge of the last hour.
His name is not mentioned, different pronoun used, very obvious what the verse preceding it is. This is an interpolated Sunni understanding of the Quran that has no weight to it whatsoever.
When the Quran has declared plainly and clearly, so
no,
Jesus does not have the knowledge of the last hour. Muhammad is with Allah, and therefore, on Judgment Day, I will be correct.
You don't have knowledge of that, Sheikh Imran. The Quran already in the present affirms that you were wrong. The Quran itself confirms most of your ideas are wrong and that you're a liar. So you don't have to wait until Judgment Day. The signs are all there. And if somebody calls you a kafir, if that gets your feathers ruffled in the same kind of, way that you can see him shaking throughout the interview, clearly holds some truth to that idea, because a person confident in their faith, in their understanding, in themselves, is not going to react as ludicrously as he has throughout the entire discussion.
On Judgment Day, I will be judged to be correct. I pity you on Judgment Day. That you saying that Jesus is the knowledge of the last hour is in conflict with the rest of the Quran.
There is no conflict because it's a hoax. The very word Isa is not in the verse. I can't believe that we have to even make this video. But clearly this is going to pan out to be a larger deception. It's already... The fact that he has to make this interview over the age of 80, at this time where, it seems like he spent the last few decades just ruminating on these very outdated, basically mystical nonsense understanding of the Quran that is rooted in, pro-Russian propaganda. It's amazing to me. It's amazing that someone can call themselves a scholar and be so confident and arrogant, preaching down as if they have ultimate authority regarding this interpretation.
That is that Jesus is the sign of the last hour. This is what ta'weed. But this is an ayah muhkama. You've taken an ayah muhkama and you've transformed it in an act of intellectual gymnastics, which is atrocious.
That's what you've done. That's what you've done, Sheikh Imran. You have done the atrocious thing and insert this error methodology into this very clear verse. Because you see, the thing that separates the believers in the Quran, whatever they call themselves, Allah knows who they are. He will guide them to where they need to be. He will guide them to become of the aminin, the people that are safe from these lies, deception, from the destruction that mankind will cause inevitably with its own hands. What we see here is the believers in the Quran accept every single thing from the Quran without any doubt. And they do this because they actually take the time to understand what this book is saying with the resources of our time period, given to us by Allah's mercy, and actually read the text independent of any other influence seeking to cause some sort of a discord with the text. This is what Allah tells you to do. He doesn't say go to the mosque and ask your imam what he thinks it means. You will not be able to use that as an excuse. Oh, it's not my fault, my imam got it wrong. Every imam you go to will give you a different story. The idea that we are not capable enough or competent enough to interpret the Quran the way that Allah is showing us through the Quran. Allah tells you himself within the Quran as well. Chapter 55, verse 3. Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. Who teaches the Quran? Sheikh Imran Hosein. Who teaches the Quran? Sunni Muslims. He's the one that teaches the Quran. Allah. His title is Al-Rahman. That's something you don't trifle with in this life, and definitely you will have no argument on the Day of Judgment. It's amazing that the world powers have conspired against this book with the jinn, mind you. And jinn are not some kind of fairy tale, psychological abstraction. Jinn are a very real creation, parallel to humans, that clearly interfere with human affairs. Chief among them, Iblis. And so, what they have conspired to do is make the very obvious truth, very obvious conclusion that, hey, is it that radical of an idea? You read the Quran as it's revealed, as the best that you can understand, because it's a clear book, revealed, all the tools necessary within the book, and the reality around it will always confirm it because it's Allah's speech. And we don't actually need secondary guidance because Allah perfected this text. It is sealed, it's complete, it's neglected nothing from the register, from the book. Is that really such a radical idea? Why do we have to complicate things with second, third, fourth, fifth party? Namely, people like Sheikh Imran Hosein.
Transformed it from an ayah muhkama to an ayah mutashabiha, which is invalid. They then say that I have declared that the Quran has a mistake.
That's not perfectly preserved.
Thank you for what you have said. On Judgment Day, say that before Allah on Judgment Day in Allah's court, that Imran Hosein said that there is a mistake in the Quran, and see what is the fate that awaits you.
Do you believe it's perfectly preserved?
When on Judgment Day, you are judged before Allah.
You just need to answer the question, that's all.
Imran Hosein said that there is a mistake in the Quran. Go and utter that rubbish on Judgment Day and see what is the fate that will await you on Judgment Day. I don't have to correct you. You are wrong, and you should be able to understand that the Quran did not come down with tashkil.
The Quran did not come down with tashkil, huh? So we're to believe that something like Ar-Rahim and Ar-Rajim, really? These dots and these diacritical marks did not come down with the Quran as a manuscript in any form, and the Prophet was instructed to read when there was nothing in front of him. We have been undersold massively. If you're listening to this video, a word of advice, don't take your religion, don't take your hereafter from any person, not even myself, not anyone. Do the work yourself. This is not a religion of gurus and priests and rabbis and imams. Those people can definitely, they have very much the capacity to lead you down the garden path to hellfire. Now, by that token, there's a lot of responsibility regarding this book. I just showed you that Isa al-Masih has nothing to do with his interpretation. He's innocent of this crime that is attributed to him.
The Quran did not come down with tashkil. Tashkil means it. Diacritical marks for Tan Kesra.
Yes.
The Quran did not come. The earliest copies of the Quran that we have in the world today don't have any tashkil. None. Go to the museum and check it out. Who put in the tashkil? It wasn't Allah, it wasn't Jibreel and Islam, but human beings.
Did you hear that? This man is actually saying that human beings added the diacritical marks to the Quran. If you watch my video regarding the grammatical understanding of the Quran, I really recommend that you do if you haven't, because what you're going to find is there is no randomness to those tashkil marks, fatha, kasra, dhamma. It actually has an amazing pertinence to what the text is actually describing. I really recommend you check it out. That being said, I'm glad that at least Dili Hussein, even though he believes that Tashkil marks did not come down with the manuscript, with the original copy of the Heavenly Quran, he at least put that the entirety of the Quran in Arabic, every letter, every diacritical mark, is the speech of Allah, which is perfectly preserved and free of any error or distortion. What I don't respect is that Dili Hussein is not being genuine with this statement, because he agreed with Sheikh Imran that the original copies of the Quran, dated, apparently carbon dated 1400 years ago, roughly, estimate, to the Prophet Muhammad's life, has none of these markings, rendering it basically unreadable when it comes to the precision of what Allah's speech demands.
So you are now telling me that the Tashkil is part of the Quran which was revealed by Allah, which is false.
I believe so.
Which is false. But these are schoolboys. So I don't have time to waste on schoolboys.
Before the Tashkil, before the diacritics, it was also like Ilmun.
Before the Tashkil, the Quran was recited, and Abdullah ibn Abbas, I'm repeating what I've said, he recited the verses, Alabun Nisan. If we had stayed with that, وَإِنَّهُ لَعَلَمٌ لِلسَّعْرِ, we would not find ourselves today in the situation.
So you can see where the problem lies. The problem was created with the religion called Sunnism masquerading as Islam. The creation of that problem lies with these forged documents claiming to be original copies from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, when he actually was disseminating the Quran orally, and clearly he had scribes writing it down. This is the problem. As soon as you accept these manuscripts, then you have to concede we don't have any validity to claim the Mus'haf is preserved, because now they can easily put this hoax story of qira'at and ahruf and variant recitations, variant readings that somehow don't contradict each other. They're all correct. They're different words entirely, but they're all correct. This is something that has created such a major fitna in the Islamic world, in the entire world. And I really hope on the Day of Judgment that Allah takes these people to account. All of those who have supported them in this clandestine cause of trying to lie on the Quran and say that basically we are obligated to believe that Orthodox Christians in Russia are our only hope and salvation, because the Quran apparently mentions their victory somewhere in there, and Putin is the greatest leader that's ever had the pleasure of running a country in our time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. A bit of a rant, to be honest with you, but something inside me didn't sit well with this idea in 2024 still gaining traction for some reason. And with that, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and peace.